everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Breaking the Lens of Bias. My name is Kat Killian. Very glad to be with you here today. And my apologies for missing last week. I had a very bad cold, and I'm hoping I can get through this episode without breaking into a coughing fit because it's still lingering around. There it goes. Um, today I'd like to talk a little bit about the biases I'm seeing that are being thrown around in regards to the revelations of documents, classified documents found in both Biden's office at the Penn Biden Center. I don't think I have that quite right, or the and his home. In comparison to how that is similar yet different to the documents found at Mar-a-Lago. So, first of all, before I get into those biases, there's something that I want to say. Obviously, there is something very flawed in our system if government elected government officials can remove documents and take them to their personal residence or personal offices upon leaving office, or even if their offices are outside and they're still in office. It's very disturbing. My understanding is things are classified for a reason, that they're supposed to be kept in secure rooms and secure procedures. And there's apparently something flawed in the procedures if people are allowed to uh, remove documents and take them home and keep them in their personal um, belongings. And so that being said, is there has to be something done about that. And the interesting thing is, this is where many people think, oh, we have too much government bureaucracy and things like that. That's where civil servants come in to play. And the civil servants are the ones who are nonpartisan, they're not elected, so they have no bearing on whether or not one party wins the office or another party wins the office. Their job is to make sure that certain procedures are followed in order for there to be security, in order for there to be appropriate records keeping in this case, and all things are supposed to go to the National Archives. Um, and these are people who are experts in these areas. And so certainly there should be some oversight by our elected officials on those procedures, but it really should be to the civil servants, those nonpartisan employees, to make sure that those procedures are followed and that our records can be secured. Um, and so, with that being said, again, that's irrelevant of what party anybody belongs to. But having been in a civil service position for the state of Illinois, I understand how those things work and the importance of them, and of being nonpartisan, and of making sure that ethical behavior is followed, no matter what your political party is. And the purpose of the government is to serve the people, not to serve the political parties. So, that being said, it's very disturbing that now documents have been found in two locations um, of, of now President Biden. And these were documents that were taken in uh, in his capacity as vice president in the Obama presidency. Excuse me. And so these documents were taken and they were found. The That has led to a lot of comparisons about, uh, well, Trump did it. Why? And now there's a special investigator and um, special counsel being appointed to look into the matter. And why isn't that being done for President Biden? Well, there's a few things to go on. I don't think anyone has said that there will not be a special investigator. The documents were initially reported when they were found by Biden's attorneys as they were cleaning out the office at the Penn Biden Center. And apparently there were ten documents, and the National Archives was immediately contacted, and they sent someone over to get them the next day. So So one of the things that I find is different about this case, and then subsequently more searches were done and some more documents were found at Biden's home. This is being investigated by the Justice Department, the Biden Justice Department, as we would say, but actually it's not, even though the Attorney General is appointed by the President, so you could say it is his Justice Department. Department of Justice is supposed to be an independent body to investigate and prosecute federal crimes and do oversight and all that kind of stuff. So it is the United States Justice Department, not the Biden Justice Department, not the Trump Justice Department. It is our Justice Department because, as citizens of the United States, we're doing that. So that's one thing. So it's being looked at, and just as with President Trump, there were some other differences that I will go into, but in Trump's case, they had conducted an investigation and then discovered that it was warranted that a special counsel be appointed to investigate that. So a special counsel was not appointed immediately. There was an investigation, and then it was determined that a special counsel was warranted because there was uh, more to be uncovered. And a lot of that had to do with the facts as we know them concerning the documents stored at Mar-a-Lago. In particular, the National Archives wasn't even aware that the Biden found the Biden documents. I'll just call them that. Were were not available. Perhaps they were copies. I don't know. Maybe this will come out once the investigation is done. The National Archives was aware that Trump had had some materials, and he and his counsel repeatedly resisted efforts by the National Archives to recover the materials. They failed to respond to subpoenas uh, from issued by a judge to retrieve the records by federal law enforcement authorities, and that is what prompted the FBI search into that. It is not persecution against Republicans. It's not persecution against Trump. It is a defiance of the law. And so, and then they were able to recover some of these. And there was a lot of stuff in the Trump camp from him on social media and his Truth Social, where he was saying things like, well, I declassified these documents. There are procedures for that. That goes back to my comments initially at the outset about nonpartisan civil servants overseeing this process and making sure that all the procedures are followed. Um, and so there was no evidence that there was any declassification of these documents going on. And so the difference is once the documents were discovered in Biden's office and home, they were turned over. It may have just been an oversight. I have heard several people on various news sources who are familiar with the way these things work that occasionally happens, and it's the documents are turned over, an investigation is done, and we really haven't heard much of anything. So apparently, it's something that happens, which leads me to believe there's a problem with the procedure. With that being said, Trump was very defiant about that, and that therein lies the difference. There's nothing to say that these things should not be investigated, but the situations are very different. Where there was a following of procedures by the Biden. Was there a breach of something? Absolutely. What that was, hopefully that investigation will uncover. Hopefully changes will be made to prevent this from happening in the future. In the case of Trump, it was a defiance. These are my records, and they are government records. Um, when I was at work, now granted I wasn't doing anything top secret or classified or anything like that, but they weren't my records. They were the records of what I did in my job. And I had a responsibility to report those. And I did live up to that responsibility, um, as outlined, in conjunction with me and other civil servants in charge of those records. But I was able to say, yes, these are the records we keep. This is why we keep them. I was able to suggest a retention period, all those kinds of things. So, here we're dealing with something that's on a way different level. And somebody saying, I don't have to turn them in. And so therein lies the difference. And so, here I'll talk a little bit about the bias. So one of the biases here is the framing effect. So there's a lot of Republicans going on and saying, this is the same thing. We need to do this. And for all the reasons I've just outlined, it's not the same thing. I'm not saying it doesn't need to be investigated, but it is not the same thing. What the uh, the FBI raid on Mar-a-Lago, it was in a response to something. Trump and his attorneys were asked to uh, cooperate and return documents, and they lied and they refused to do so. So the government, trying to get cooperation, as the Biden team did, cooperate when these things were found, they had to resort to other more drastic measures in order to recover those documents, which were in an unsecure location, which had a lot of people, including some Chinese spies, who had gained access. Now, whether or not they gained access to the documents, that's probably something that's being investigated. I don't know. I'm not privy to those, but logic kind of leads to that being a possible uh, point of the investigation. So that framing effect, when you're listening to people in the media framing it in a certain way, I think it's important, in order to break that bias, to really look at how is it being framed. Are the situations the same? Are we comparing apples to apples, or is it apples to oranges? They're both fruit, but they both have they're very different, and so we have to look at this situation like that. um, do that. Another bias that, or a fallacy actually of thinking, I think, is what's called black and white thinking. So Trump had documents, Biden had documents. The only possibility is that they're both corrupt, um, and maybe corrupt is a strong word, um, but they both erred, and so therefore they should be treated exactly the same. So that's the black and white thinking on that. And again, because of the reasons outlined, are the two situations exactly the same? There are more possibilities that exist in this institution, or in this situation. So the black and white thinking is, it's not the same. There is nuance to it. There's the gray area of what really happened here. Was it just an error, or was it deliberately taken? Um, was there cooperation, or was there stonewalling going on? And so when you look at those things, you can't compare it as a black and white situation. It's a fallacy of thinking to think that. So people who are posting memes and things like that are saying that it is a black and white situation, and it's really not. And that's why it's up to us to look at the biases and the fallacies in our thinking in order to say, what's really going on here and happening? And so, a lot of reason that's happening is probably for the last bias that I'd like to bring up today, which is called the in-group bias. So if you are a Republican, you are going to cry, oh, we're being persecuted, we're being persecuted. And if you fall in the Democratic camp, um, you may be more likely to forgive Biden. Well, it's not the same, so we should just let it go. And therein lies there is something wrong here. Um, don't fall prey to the in-group bias. Look at the facts of the situation. People are allowed, when they are leaving posts that have classified information to take that classified information with them. Logic to me dictates that should be compartmentalized. There has to be some kind of procedure set up to ensure, with checks in the system, to ensure that those documents don't get taken. Um, and so, not falling prey to the in-group bias, but still understanding the differences in the situations, um, leads me to say I'm not falling trap to that bias. I'm not saying Republicans are being persecuted, nor am I saying Democrats should be forgiven. The Democrats should be forgiven. It is a a problem of procedure. Simple. It is a problem of procedure that needs to be addressed. Now, what comes out of that, should it be investigated? Absolutely. Does the Biden situation warrant a special master? Perhaps. The initial investigation will reveal that. We have to let that go down its track. So, in conclusion, I hope this helped to look at some of the biases that we look at when we're looking at things that are happening in our popular culture today. I think that's really what I've been trying to do, is bring things that are happening in within the past week to look at how the media is portraying the biases, how we're portraying the biases in social media, and how we are looking at these things. So that will end another day of breaking the lens of bias. Again, my name is Kat Killian. Thanks for being here with me today, and thanks for putting up with a little bit of coughing. And I hope to see you next week. Have a great week. Bye.